And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I'm talking to a fella that I met when I was down in Texas at the ACA. Oh, hang on. I'm going to turn the volume down on my phone here. It's going to get weird if I leave it going. Anyways, his name is Phil Session. You guys probably have seen him on the Atheist Experience. That's the first place I ever saw him. So I was a fan instantly when I heard some of the replies he gave to some theists to call in. So, anyways, Phil, let's get into this. Let's take us back to, I guess, when you first started having doubts about religious beliefs and stuff like that, and the journey that you went on that led you to becoming the atheist activist that you are.
Okay, hello everyone. As as Neil mentioned, I'm Phil Session, and my story, I'm sure is similar to a lot of other folks that are out there. But I was raised very religious. I had two sides of the family, both of which attended church very, very often. I had the unique experience of having two home churches. So on one side of the family, on my mom's side, they were Southern Baptists. And so we would
Ooh.
have that main church on Sunday. And my dad's side was Free Church of God in Christ. So
Oh, I
they would
never heard of
have,
that.
yes, they are definitely around. And I think I think they're becoming more popular. I'm not sure if it was just a breakaway from the Kojic church to go in the free Kojic route. I'm not sure, but that was definitely the church that uh, I grew up with. But they have several chapters in other states, I know for sure. And so it's
Okay.
not just that single church, but their main gathering is on Saturdays. And so
Hmm.
it was very interesting growing up. But when I was in those churches when I was younger, I participated. I loved the singing portion, especially of the F. Kojic church. That was a very big thing. Like, just randomly, somebody's talking and somebody in the crowd would stand up and start a song, and all of a sudden, boom, there we're off to the races. And 10 minutes later, we're winding down for someone else to start talking. It was very awesome experience. At least I really enjoyed it when I was growing up. But I remembered that there were little differences between the two churches for sure. There were little things that kind of I wondered about as a child, but I didn't have the wherewithal to ask it right off. And then when I finally did, I know one of the first questions that I brought up when I was maybe 9 or 10 was the baptismal pool. So in the Baptist church, of course, that is a part of the rite of passage for Baptists, for most
Hmm.
of denominations, should I say. You have some type of baptismal service. In this case, in our old church, we actually had a pool that was in front of this beautiful forest type of mural thing on the back, which was amazing. It still looks amazing uh, to this day. But the F. Kojic, well, they have no pool. So in the space that would normally be the pool, I remember before I even asked, I went back there to just see what was behind the curtain because it was a huge curtain. And I was like, well, maybe there's a pool behind there. Like, why would they not have a pool? In my, childlike innocence, that's the way I thought. Like, why would they not have a pool? Obviously, churches have pools. And I went back there, and to my surprise, it was just storage. There was no pool back there. And I remember asking my mom when we were in service at the F. Kojic Church, and we were just sitting in the pews. And I asked her because this wasn't her home church. I was like, well, where's the pool? It's just it was a super honest question, and I think about it and asking now. I'm like, I wonder what she would have thought, like what went through her head, but she just said that all not all churches uh, have that type of thing in them, and she just kind of left it at that because maybe she was just being nice or not wanting to kind of stomp on this other church that she had friends and family with and everything else, and so it was
Right, right.
interesting. But I thought it was interesting that these churches that I've grown up in had these differences. Like the F. Kojic had the big Lake of Fire poster, and This is about
Wow.
a 7, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall by 3 or 4 feet wide lake of fire thing. And it was all this fire and brimstone on it. And over the entire thing, there were all of these little words of things that would get you, admittance into the lake of fire. And so they had, lying, blaspheming, just all these different little words. And so, especially as a child, when I saw up there like lying, because I know I had told a lie at that point before, in some instance to someone,
Uh-oh.
it had happened. And so, here's this big mural thing that's showing, the lake of fire, basically saying that you are deserving of this if you do any one of these things, which it was so many words there of so many actions that someone could do, that it was like,
Mhm.
well, how could you possibly avoid this? I remember thinking that, but the Baptist side did not have anything like that, and there's just some very interesting differences there. But I grew up in it. I was active in singing, and the Easter programs where everybody dresses up in their Sunday best, as it's called, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
does that whole thing. But I went through, my high school years as a believer. I started having some issues when I realized. I mean, I realized it for a while that I was definitely gay, like super gay, like just, like it's just no doubt. I knew who I was attracted to. I could remember the names of my crushes. Like I knew, like to this day, I still know those
Right, right.
folks in my head. But that I knew that there were passages in the Bible that talked about homosexuality, but neither one of the churches that I went to focused on those. But I knew they were there. I knew they
Right.
were there because family would talk about them when there was something coming on TV, or somebody a show that depicted someone as being gay, and there might be a conversation that talked
Okay.
about that, and like the disapproving tone of things. And so I
From your
remember,
family?
yeah, from folks in my family, from also friends and acquaintances that may have saw something on TV or a movie or something like that, and they had something to say about that lifestyle as it was
Sure.
coined back then. And I'm sitting here as a believer. I believe in God. But it was kind of tossing me for a little bit, like how can that be? I know this is the case. Like there's no question about
Mhm.
this. So, where do I go from here? And so through high school, I kind of pushed it to the side. I still maintained as a believer, but I kind of reconciled it like, well, God made me this way. He built me
Yeah.
this way, and everything that I have, like that's what I was taught. That was my framework. And so if I'm this way and I know that this is the case and whatever else, then that can't necessarily be wrong. And so I just reconciled it that way and pushed it to the side and kind of continued my journey graduating high school. And
Mhm.
it kind of it reached a point in college where I think I started questioning it more in depthly versus just kind of surface level. Oh, he made me that way. Okay, awesome, cool, we're done. And push it to the side, which was super convenient in high school. And I don't necessarily regret that because it at first it weighed down on me for a while, and once I kind of justified it in that way, I was like, oh, we're golden, and like we can keep on moving and it's no problem. But uh, when I got to college, I'm here, I'm in the engineering program, and when I go into the engineering building, there's all these type of folks, all different cultures that are around in this building that I'm
Yeah.
being exposed to for the first time. Like it's that my high school had some eclectic bunches of folks, but it was nothing like this. And it really
Right.
kind of opened my eyes to the rest of the world, so to speak. And I hate to think of it in those terms, but it was true. That's exactly what it was. So as I got to know folks and I got to talking with people in classes and hanging out outside of class, And I remember an instance in going over one of my friends' houses. They were of Indian descent,
Mhm.
and I believe they were Hindu. And went over their house. Went over their house to eat some food. Basic stuff, not
Okay.
really expecting anything. Yeah, and it was amazing. The food was
Oh, jealous.
the food was the bomb. It was awesome. Just saying.
I
just
know. Indian food is
Oh, it was all
awesome.
homemade. It was so well done. Any case, side note,
That's the best kind.
it was hot. Holy shit, it was hot. Oh.
That's okay.
But it really was hot.
How's your tolerance level for spicy?
Yeah, I thought it was high. I thought, like, I've
Okay.
had hot wings before. I've had the atomic flavor of hot wings at Wingstop. If anyone is familiar with Wingstop, it's super hot. It can burn your nose just you opening the box, and your nose will instantly just seize up, and your tears will start rolling. And by the time you get, like, it hurts going in while it's there, and it hurts going out. Like, it's the whole 9 yards. But I was not ready
That's
for
hard,
this.
raw hot there.
Right. That is true. That is true. But whew. But as I'm looking around their place, and we're talking, playing games, just chilling out. I'm seeing all these figures that are on the walls, all of these different, statues of gods and different forms, and it's amazing. And as I'm just taking all this in, it's just, I had this realization back then that, here are, these people, these are super nice people. I'm eating their food for free, just chilling out over their house, and they believe something that's completely different, completely out of sync with everything that I've been taught in the religious spectrum. It was a huge difference, and yet they believed it just as strongly as I did. They,
Sure. Yeah.
all this, it was amazing to see, and it was an awesome learning experience for me. But that's what made me start looking at my own beliefs a little more in depthly, to say, okay, if they're believing it like this, if they're taking it this way, well, I believe mine is completely different from theirs, and yet, like, we're on the same plane, like, we believe at the same level, the same strength, so to speak. They
Sure.
believe that they're correct, I believe I'm correct. What is this supposed to be? And so that's where my questions started to kind of bubble up from their serious questions about the way that I was brought up. And
Okay.
you know that's when I started doing a little bit more research into what I believed, and I started to go back to some of those same verses in the Bible that were talking about uh, homosexuality, and some others that are uh, nonsense. And and so I
I like
found
the
I,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I remember finding a website that was super informative, and I need to look it up again because I wonder if the website is still active. But it provided you the ability to lock on to a chapter or verse or an entire book of the Bible in one translation, and then choose another translation, and it would show you the text of that translation. And I thought it was super cool. And so I started, like, a King James
Mm.
version, of course. King James. That's what I grew up with. That's what we had. So here we go. This is the word right here. This is the word. Uh, so I started there, and I started backing up, a century or two, going to different translations and seeing the different
Sure.
ways that verses were said, like, the different way people talked, which makes perfect sense, of course. And I remember getting to a translation that I think was like either the 12th or 13th century of the Bible, and the verse in Leviticus that I was looking at in particular, it wasn't there. And so the website came back and said, this chapter is not present in this translation, or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's curious, because at this point I didn't have any knowledge about, the Council of Nicaea. I didn't have any knowledge of all of these different ways of writing the text and how things have changed over time. This is my first real introduction to that on this website right here, in front of my face. And that's what made me realize.
That's the first time you. That was the first time you heard about the Council of Nicaea and stuff like that?
That was a part of it. Yeah, I didn't know it right then because I was looking at the translations themselves. But after I started realizing that translations change, some things are omitted, some things are present in other books that are just completely taken out of others, depending on which translations that you're hitting. It made me realize
Right.
that the way that I phrased it in my mind at the time is there were a lot of hands in these pots. Like there was a lot of hands in this cookie jar making this Bible. And so when I'm looking at myself and the fact that I know I'm gay, and yet there are passages in that are expressly condemning of homosexuality, I know that there are certain denominations that take a more progressive view, and they
Yep.
throw out some pieces. And I know their church, trying to be in the effort to be inclusive in order to, you know, really appease their congregation and follow their hearts. But there are these scriptures that these verses are there, and some are
Oh
more
yeah.
clear than others. And yet, my take on it was, how could I be sure that the translation that I was exposed to my entire life was the correct one? How could I say that this version that has this verse that's so problematic for me is the correct one when this other translation did not have this? And
Right.
how do I decide which translation is correct?
Well, I always found it very strange that anyone would rearrange the Bible considering it's supposedly the inerrant word of God, right? So you got to figure, how could anyone in their right mind want to move stuff around or remove or add or anything like passages and stuff? So just seemed kind of odd to me.
Okay, Neil, I'm not sure. I just lost you for about the last 20 seconds or so there, so I'm not
Oh,
sure
oh,
what you said.
am I coming through now?
You're coming through
Am I
now.
coming through
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just said I always thought it was funny that people would add or remove stuff from the Bible when it was supposed to be the inerrant word of God.
Right. Right. It
So
was.
it always struck me as weird.
Yeah, and it was always taught to me in that this is God's word. That's why I referred it to that way early on. This is God's word. This is supposed to be that unchanging foundation of which you could build your life based
Mhm.
on these verses. And yet now I'm sitting here looking at, this website and seeing that there were a lot of variations in the word of God over time. And
Mhm.
so it put a human face on the book for me. It put a very human face on there. And it was at that point I backed off of calling myself, well, I didn't back off right then. The way I said that I was still a Baptist. I still hung on to that title. I was still a believer and everything else. It didn't shake my
Mhm.
belief in God per se, but it did shake my belief in this book in particular.
Right.
This one I was exposed to, because it's like, well, who's to say what should or should not be in here? Who's making those decisions, and is it even the right one if we're following this translation? But now here's the new international version is out, and things have changed, and the words have changed, and the modern version or whatever else that people want to come up with, and things change and glide over time. uh, how do you go about that? And so I stopped going actively to a church service, but I would continue to have my own type of praise sessions in the house. And so I would put on music, and it would be religious music, things that I enjoyed, and I would be just in my living
Mhm.
room and just, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm cleaning
Singing,
up,
yeah.
cleaning up, cooking food or whatever else, but it's in the background. We're just going. We're just going. It's just, and having, back
Gospel's
kind.
really great music. So
Yeah, there's some really awesome. I mean, there's songs. Good night. I was listening to a song just today on my way home from the movie The Prince of Egypt, as a matter of fact, because that movie had a lot of good songs on it. I bought that freaking CD. I remember that. with my little bit of allowance that I had at that time. Because I mean, there was some good music, and so even now at every Christmas, I will still play Whitney Houston's version of "Joy to the World" because it's fucking phenomenal, and she was just an
Great
amazing.
voice.
It was an amazing singer, and it has no religious bearing for me, but hot damn, like it is just like I love it. I love it. But
She's got a
anyway,
phenomenal voice. So
she was.
no.
Oh, she was. Man, I remember after she passed, just a quick random aside, I was at a gay club up in Dallas, S4, at the time, and this was very recently after she passed, and all night were her songs with the music video, remixes of her songs. It was just the whole fucking night, and people were crying, and people were singing,
Oh,
and it was an amazing time. It was just she was such an amazing voice. Anyway, off that random
that's
tangent
okay.
thing.
Happens all the
But
time in these conversations. Don't even worry about it.
yeah. So, I had my own little praise sessions, but I still had the belief in God. It was still there. I was still, calling myself as Christian. I identified that way. Uh, but I didn't call myself Baptist. I kind of left that piece out of it because it was just like, I'm not sure if that's right. But my belief in God was secure. So, we're good to go. So we're moving on. And
Well,
it was no problem. Sorry.
if you were no longer Baptist, does that mean you couldn't swim in the pool anymore?
Yeah, no pools for me. No pools for me. I mean, I valued all of my upbringing. It was just like, well, it kind of went back to the fact that one church had a baptismal pool and the other one didn't. It's like, well,
Yeah.
it was once again the human face on these religious beliefs that I had been brought up with, and which one is actually correct out of the two? Is it correct to have the baptismal pool or is it not? Because here are two sides, and people believe just fine and decide this, like they're not worried about, having to be, thrown into the water. And the other side, it's a big thing when you turn, between 8 and 12 or whatever it is, on that side to be dipped.
Yeah.
So I kept the belief, and it was there for a while, and a few years went by, and this was just my ritual that I would do every Sunday. I would have my own little, praise session with music almost exclusively, and I was good to go. But as time went on, and I was there in college, I can't remember what initially sparked the question, but I know it was on one of the Sundays that I was doing this, and it was the question of, well, why am I believing in this particular one when I go to class with people that believe something completely different than I do, but believe it just as strongly? Like, what is making my interpretation correct? And it was kind of having that introspective moment where I kind of left the label of being Christian behind because I had no way to justify that my religion was correct and theirs was wrong. And it was the understanding that I'm Christian and I identify as such because I was raised in that. And they identify as theirs because they were raised in that. And so, how could I say that mine was right? And as opposed to theirs, who's wrong in so many ways in relation to what I believe. And so I adopted the label of spiritual, not religious, but spiritual, not religious, that type of title. And I identified as that for years. I still had a belief in a God. I didn't become, polytheistic or anything like that. I didn't become deistic. It was still the belief that a deity was there that had a hand in the creation of this universe, but I still had this monotheistic view because that's what I was brought up with, more than likely.
Yeah, we tend to lean towards that because of that.
Yeah, it was just, it was something that I didn't consider, stop, like, to not believe in a deity. That was not one of the options that came up, even when I was having these conversations,
Had you heard of
with myself.
atheism at the time, or?
Literally not at all. Like the literal word atheist, I had never run across. Like, I did not
Okay.
have that in my vocabulary at the time. This, and of course, I'm in college now. And I mentioned
Seems
on
kind of weird.
the yes, it is, isn't it? Because in my churches, both of them, if it was ever referred to as someone who was an atheist, it was never referred to as that word. Agnostic wasn't used, anything like that. It was always something along the lines of someone that rejects the word of God,
Right.
someone that has stepped out of God's protective embrace. Um,
Right. Oh,
you
wow, okay.
know, someone who rejects their blessings, that has, welcomed the devil's influence. It was all of these other it was all of these other ways of trying to refer to that, a person that has that label without actually using that label. And I'm not sure if that was
Right.
just on purpose, or if they, like, because YouTube wasn't a big thing when I was going. That wasn't a thing. We were still getting AOL CDs when you go to the grocery store and
Ah,
trying to get online and hoping nobody wanted to use the phone, and
yeah.
got to disable the call waiting because it's going to stop your dial tone thing, and it'll just screw up your connection. And oh man, it was
Oh, those
so.
were the days.
Weren't they? My goodness, I still remember when because we had a modem that was 14.4 kilobits per second.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember when the 56 kilobit per second modem came out, and it was like, oh, look at this. Look at this technology. Like, like, this is
Speed.
amazing. It was it was an amazing gadget, and it wasn't external like the old modem we had hooked up with a parallel port. This one was actually internal, hooked into one of the PCI slots, so it was all slick, and oh, it was just. But yeah, like I said,
Techno advanced.
but yeah, like today, of course, people have to worry about their kids when they're looking at, like, they can go online, go on YouTube, and quickly, get a better understanding of whatever term they're exposed to if they want to learn more. But back then, that wasn't really the concern. So I'm not sure why the different pastors. It wasn't just one pastor. There were several people that would refer to it in those roundabout ways and never use the term, and I never got a clear understanding as to why that was done that way. Maybe just not to put the
Hmm.
idea in anyone's head that that is a position that
Maybe.
you could take, versus always being a negative
That's right.
connotation of, leaving the word of God, or, wandering in the darkness, looking for the light or something like that. Always these other ways of going about it. But uh, yeah, I took spiritual but not religious, and stayed that way for years, and was really lazy. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it. I didn't think about it. My I was good. I was good. I had my belief in a deity. I didn't have to worry about labeling myself as anything. I didn't have to worry about going to any service. I could have my own service at my own leisure and not have to worry about anybody else's judgment. I would still attend churches when I went back home, and there was something going on at one, a
Sure.
wedding, or your funerals, or one of the church or Easter services, whatever I was in town for. I would still go to them, but I wouldn't be anywhere near as engaged as I used to be.
Hmm.
And I remember that difference. Even when songs would pop up, and that was my jam. That was what I liked. But it wasn't quite the same. Even though I may enjoy the music, I wasn't interacting as I used to. And I did notice that in the latter parts of college. And over time, over the next 2 or 3 years, I just kind of stopped doing my Sunday ritual, not making a conscious decision or anything like that.
Hmm.
I just kind of stopped doing it. And I stopped thinking it was really necessary. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I no longer had a belief in God. I stopped doing prayers nightly, that type of thing. None of those things became important. That's the way it seemed
Right.
for me. But
Was
it
it
was just
just like a sudden stop? One day you just stopped doing it, or
I think
did you notice like a decline?
it was a decline because I used to do my own personal Sunday ritual thing every single Sunday, and it was just like boom, there it was. I started making compromises with myself, saying, okay, on Sunday I will start off with gospel stuff, but I would limit it to only 3 songs or something, which sounds so arbitrary because that's exactly what it was. I would just say, I'll do at least the first 3 songs. Are going to be religious. And then from then on, I will listen to whatever I want because I listen to a lot of music
Right.
all the time at work. Even now, through almost every job that I've ever had, I listen to music. And when I'm at home, I have all my speakers hooked up and I'm always listening to, some type of music. And so
Is that what's going through your headphones right now then? Or?
it's the music of Neil. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I haven't started singing yet, but don't tempt me.
Oh dear. I'm scared for everyone. I'm scared for everyone. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Hey, I am
this.
a singer.
So yeah, I haven't heard you. I have. Oh, do you really?
Yeah. I've got on SoundCloud. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I
it's hard to read. Some acoustic.
Okay, that's pretty cool. See, I didn't know that. Like, you didn't have that. I remember getting your card. I thought, did I get your card? I could have sworn I did. Oh yeah, the sticker. That's right. It was the sticker. That's what it was. I was like, I don't remember seeing a SoundCloud or anything like that on there because I at least try to investigate people's their channels and everything else when I actually look at them. But that's pretty awesome.
I'll put a link in the messenger chat or whatever. You can have a
okay, cool. I appreciate that. But yeah, so I would make little arbitrary deals with myself. Three songs to start off the day at the very least, and then I can listen to whatever I want because my music is almost always on random when I listen to it. And it shifted down from that to the first song. And I remember months later, it shifted down to I'm not going to specifically look for a religious song to play, but if one happens to play randomly, I can't turn away. And I remember that. It seems so fickle now. It seems so random now, but that's exactly what it was, and it's amazing to think that that's how I kind of justified it in my head. That if I heard a religious song, whether it was in the car or the house, I could not turn it away if it was Sunday. I would have to listen to the entire thing. Like, then what is that? What is that?
That's I guess something you got in your head and you stuck with it.
Right. And it to me at that time it seemed perfectly right. And even then, even after that went on for a while, I just kind of let it go because there were some Sundays where, of course, I have thousands of songs and only a very small fraction are religious in nature. There would be a lot of Sundays where none would play at all. And I was not compelled to seek them out. I did not feel like I just had to do this in order for my Sunday to be complete. And as years went on, it kind of kept on going. Like I wasn't concerned about it at all anymore. And I realized much later on, I realized without really realizing it at the time that I had no belief in a God, for the last few years that I was in college, even when I moved away and started my work life after my bachelor's degree, it was just, I just didn't have it.
Just wake up one day and went, geez, I don't believe in God anymore, and I don't think I have for a while, that kind of thing? Or
no, it was funny actually. You can blame YouTube, as a matter of fact.
Many people say that.
Yeah, that is a thing. So I will say this. Now, I I wasn't actively listening to songs. Like I wasn't a believer, but I did not know that. I didn't acknowledge that as a fact and something that I um, actually held until I was exposed to certain things on YouTube. So, for instance, um, I was looking at, I happened to get onto, I believe it was Christopher Hitchens originally.
Ah, okay.
Uh, and I only got through, I didn't pick Christopher Hitchens. It auto played from something that I believe I was watching from Bill Nye on Big Think, that channel that was on YouTube that would produce all those, very white background, big
Yep.
idea type of thing. And I believe it was a Bill
I
Nye
think I've seen every
something that
one
was
of them.
happening. Like, there's some very interesting conversation, like little blurbs that are on it, like mini TED talks that are just like bite-sized pieces uh, that are digestible. But YouTube
Mm.
auto-played over to something that Christopher Hitchens was doing. Now I'm cleaning. I'm not actively sitting there looking at the screen, so I'm doing other things, and it's just kind of playing on the speakers. And he was talking, and very reasonable arguments as he's talking about religion, and he was talking about, I think, in that one, the suppression of women, especially in a lot of
Mm.
third world countries, and the empowerment of women in order to rise the status of countries on there, and he was kind of tying those together. But he was also talking about just some of the foolishness of religion, some of the stories that didn't make any sense, and yet it is promoted by so many around the world as, not only should this make sense, but if you don't believe it, something's wrong with you. And if you're in the wrong place, it can also mean your imprisonment or death, depending on your region, if you don't
Oh,
adhere
yeah.
to what they're saying is correct and true and reasonable and expected of you to believe. And so, in my head, I'm vacuuming or doing something, and just kind of nodding along, like, oh, okay, sure, it makes sense. And so auto played, because kind of kept on rolling along, and it eventually hit on the Thinking Atheist. Uh, and I,
Ah,
yeah,
so-
I'm not sure if I've actually talked to. I've talked to quite a few individual times, but I'm not sure if I actually laid all that out. But in any case, he was on, and it was, I think it started on one of his Halloween stories or something like that, where they go like tell ghost
oh,
stories or
the
something
ghost
like
stories.
that. Yeah, yeah. And it was
Yeah.
just playing in the background. You know what? I'm not paying too much attention. I'm doing other stuff. And and so I know it autoplayed to at least one other of his podcasts. And it was in the midst of this podcast that he was talking to a caller, or just gotten off with a caller, something like that. And he referenced kind of what an atheist is. And so he kind of broke it down by saying, it's only someone, it's not necessarily someone that declares that no deity exists, but it's someone who lacks a belief in
Mhm.
a God. And that was the first time that I'd ever heard the word atheist and its definition crammed together like that. And I remember stopping.
Little light
Uh,
go off for there.
yeah, yeah, it really did. Like, I remember stopping, and I remember sitting on the side of my bed, and it was just this realization, like, holy shit. Uh, he's talking about me, like, this is, this is what I am. And
Mhm.
it was just kind of going over everything in my head, like, when did this happen? When did I stop believing, like, but no, it was a serious conversation, because I had put it out of my mind for so long. I didn't actively think about it, and it wasn't at the forefront anymore. And so I wasn't having these long intellectual conversations with myself. I was just going about my business and not worrying about
Sure.
it. But at that moment, it was like, well, shit, it is. This is actually a thing. This is actually, he's describing me. And I remember shedding tears at the side of my
Oh,
bed. Uh, because all of a sudden here's this label, here's this thing, and it's actually what I am. And I had no idea, and I couldn't figure out, at least back then, when I had transitioned to this. Like I couldn't pinpoint where that starting place was.
Right.
And
Right.
I let it keep auto playing, and
Oh
I
boy.
was just kind of listening to the rest of the podcast as it went through, and from there, that's when my all the knobs changed, and all of a sudden it was just like I started consuming, like not auto playing on YouTube, but purposefully seeking out, looking at the little related video bar,
Sure.
and clicking on this, and started going piece by piece, and just a bajillion different podcasts, and just absorbing so many different pieces, a lot of stuff by Christopher Hitchens, and debates that people have had, Richard Dawkins, and some of the debates that he's had. Some of them big, some of them small, just a lot of different perspectives that all of a sudden I was getting exposed to. That I'm sitting here listening, and I'm like, yeah, and yeah, it makes sense. That's like,
Yeah.
duh. So obviously, it was all these, it was all
One of
these
those
little
like
things, but yeah, like the arguments were just, they were so sound, and I'm just like, that was me. Like, I would have been on the other side, like these people that were trying to use apologetics, or trying to kind of worm their way out of some of the more ridiculous parts of the Bible, and saying, this part is just, that's um, you know that's not literal. That's just, that's kind of some
yeah.
fluff that was there. Different people had different ways of describing it, but I remember Noah's Ark being explained to me as if this was a real fucking boat, and they're marching right in there. That's the way that I remember. And as hearing it taken apart, and looking at the logistics of this, magic, deity or not, or whatever else, like this seems a little far fetched on this side. And actually hearing those arguments, that it really solidified the base. But I was an atheist for years before that point, until I actually heard the definition and the word atheist put together.
That's where I am.
Yeah, it was an amazing kind of realization, and it sparked. I'm not sure, I wouldn't say hundreds of hours of consumption of YouTube content, but it was a lot.
Close.
It was definitely a lot of consumption happening there, and I couldn't get enough. And it was fascinating to hear all these different sides of it, and different
Yeah.
experiences from other people that were religious, and talked about their deconversions, and having intellectual arguments, and talking about some of the things that never made sense to them. And that starts me trailing back in my own mind about things that didn't make sense to me. The whole Adam and Eve story seemed weird, because it was taught, I remember in Sunday school, as it was a literal, made from dust, and Adam was made.
Mhm.
And and in my mind, in my childlike mind, I'm picturing, like, molding clay together, like Play-Doh or something, and God breathed the breath of life into Adam, and
Yeah.
boom, there he was. And so, but
In in
but he needed a partner. It's
in the
oh, sorry, go ahead.
in the Jewish tradition, that's called a golem,
No,
where
okay.
you make a clay figure and you breathe life into it,
Okay.
and then you stick some note or something in there. I think in the mouth of the golem, and then he goes and he takes care of whatever business is on the note for you. Usually, go to kill someone, as far as I
I
know.
see.
You got a little kudos in the chat here from my friend Ivana Opry. She says that you're very awesome for doing so much what you do with the homeless.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really do. Good night. I should, if I could, I would show you my other room. I live in a two-bedroom right now. My second bedroom is essentially a storage for a lot of the supplies that are there. It's full of boxes and deodorants, and just so much stuff that's in there, and that's just the way
Amazing.
that it goes. Uh, yeah, it's just like a lot of those different stories, and knowing that other people had these same kinds of questions,
Mhm.
and that I wasn't alone. And like, I mean, of course, I didn't have the breadth of knowledge that a lot of these folks had to go in depth into a lot of these different issues, but I had questions of my own that were never resolved, or it was kind of brushed to the side to say, oh, you should pray on it, or God would reveal it to you eventually.
Yeah, but
The you know understand it through God's eyes. But that takes time, that takes prayer, and it was amazing to see all of this content out there from so many people that were non-believers, and identifying as atheists, and had no issue getting on YouTube and talking about a lot of these different things. And it was like, this is fucking awesome. And so that's what kind of that's what kind of solidified my, I guess, journey into it, is hearing a lot of the arguments and agreeing with so much that I was consuming. Not everything, because some people were didn't necessarily have the best arguments that were there. I mean, but different people are swayed by different things, and we talk about that a
sure,
lot on the Atheist Experience. There are some people that are persuaded more so by the anecdotal side of things versus the intellectual type of arguments and piecing things apart. It just depends on the person and the way that they learn the best. So
sure.
it was it was
A lot of
interesting.
people think a lot of people think that personal experiences are some of the best way. It's the believe it when I see it sort of thing. And if somebody had this experience, why should you question them about their experience? They're
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
they're telling you the truth.
I mean,
That's sort of how
obviously.
their mindset is. I think. Fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I remember
it's
people. Yeah, I remember people catching the spirit, as we called it, in our church. It didn't happen too often because neither one of our churches were about that life. There are a
mhm.
lot of churches that are, but there were a few people here and there. And I remember when we visited a church out of town over um, in East Texas, there were a few people that caught the spirit, as we used to call it. And I remember as a child being like, what the hell is that? Being like, what are they doing? Like, what's happening over there? And it kind of being explained to me that oh, they're catching the spirit. It was an elder woman who was catching the spirit. And as kids, I mean, we were kiddish, like tween, like early teenagers, something like that. And it was still like, what is her problem? It was it was not like a hallelujah
Why
moment.
is
It
she
was,
doing this?
what the hell is happening over there with her? Is she all right? You know, it was it
Somebody help
was
that lady.
right, right. It was much more about concern than it was about, yes, this is something that we should strive for, and this is what it's all about. Or the speaking in tongues was also a very interesting one to me, because the
Oh
way that it
yeah.
was, yeah, the way it was explained to me was, well, it's a way to talk to it's the way to talk to the Lord without the devil and his angels or demons, however you want to call it, without his helpers hearing your conversation. And
Oh,
you're
interesting.
right, right. And that threw me for a loop, because in my mind, I'm like, why? God is the supreme one. He's all powerful, all this kind of stuff. Why am I concerned about, what some douchebag overhears? Like, no, what is that going to do on that side? If God's will be done, then it won't be undone by this other character. And so, even
Yeah.
when I was younger, I could never rationalize as to why that was done. But I mean, I still remember, doing it, or even practicing. Then I started on the bowl, God. It was just like, it's you have it there, and it's interesting, and it's like, you can do it. And I remember, trying to do it, but I never could really understand, because I'm saying these phrases and things that were emulating what other people were sounding like. And in your mind, we were supposed to pray and talk and have a conversation with the Lord, but because I was saying these different phrases, then the devil supposedly couldn't hear. And I'm like, well, I didn't think about it in those terms at the time, but as I'm older, I'm like, well, who the fuck cares? If old Joe hears what I'm saying, like, what does that matter? When you're going against the might of God, like, what, that doesn't make sense to me. And so that never caught on with me as much as it did with other people. So it's
something I noticed about the people that speak in tongues is if you ask them to repeat themselves, they probably wouldn't be able to do it.
well, like there are certain phrases, like once you get used to certain phrases, you can kind of bring those back up. But if you're talking about getting things exactly the same, that would be much harder to do. But when everything's kind of run together, it's like people can't really understand. And even if you do catch someone kind of repeating the same thing over and over, as kids might do, of course, because they know one thing and it sounds right and they gonna stick with it. It is what it is. Yeah. And in the attempt to fit in, it makes a lot of sense. But the rationale was they're speaking to the Lord in their own way. You can't understand or pick up based on your own understanding what they're saying. Like, even though it may say the same to you, that message is getting relayed somehow,
right,
over there. So it was
somehow. That's a good way to somehow. Not quite sure how, but somehow.
No, we don't get into those specifics around here.
Yeah,
but it's a very interesting journey to say the least. But yeah, YouTube done did it. YouTube done killed it, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I would be exactly or how I would identify with myself unless I was exposed in that way and started to develop this understanding about myself and knowing that that's an actual identity that people carry, and it just so happens to apply to me as well. So I don't know, but it was definitely fortunate. But yeah, YouTube autoplay, the lovely algorithms of the god of Google, and there it was.
The god of Google.
Indeed.
I like it. I'm assuming by now, because I believe I heard you speak about it on the show before. You've come out to your family as being an atheist, correct?
Yes. It wasn't directly though. It was not this we're gonna have a talk, come sit down. It wasn't it wasn't one of those kinds of things, but it was I was hesitant for a while. I consumed atheist content. I knew that I was an atheist for a while, but I didn't necessarily say anything to anybody or share any memes or anything like that. Instead, when my volunteerism started kicking up, I remember, goodness, I agonized over, should I post this on my page, knowing that I have cousins, I have siblings, I have aunts, and that are on here, that if I post this, it's going to be seen that I'm doing this community service activity with this atheist organization. And so do I really want to go that route? And I contemplated that for hours before I actually decided to post something about it. But I finally ended up doing it, and I breathed a sigh of relief, and I'm just gonna wait for the calls to start and the messages to come in, and we're gonna see what happens. Let's just see where this goes. Now, to my surprise, nobody directly reached out right then and there. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe people are seeing this. And since it was couched in community service, you can say some bad things about it, but you couldn't say it was all bad. So it was like, I was like, trying to be strategic in my posting here. And but some of the aunts did.
Well, can't you tag people? You can tag people for these things, can you? You can tag people for those postings, can't you?
Oh yeah. You could have, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to tag anybody. I was gonna post it. I'm not gonna draw any extra attention to it. I'm just gonna put it out there into the ether, and we'll just see what happens. It was one of those type of things, and somehow I justified that to myself in my brain and posted the thing, and I was like, okay, nobody's called, no one's texted, no angry private messages yet. Okay, all right, here we go. We'll just keep on going. We'll see how it is at the next family gathering, and
Yeah, yeah.
we'll fill this out. But and so I started posting more things here and there about giveaways for the homeless, or river cleanups, or whatever else was going on, tree plantings, etc. And things were okay. It's still nothing, still no crazy, no ridiculous phone calls or anything like that. So it was like, okay. And
Well, I mean, you got to think, who's going to call you up and give you crap for volunteering to do some awesome stuff like that anyways?
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I tell you that, because at a family function, we were there. We were getting food, just getting food as normal. And one of my family members said to me, oh, what do you got going on this weekend? In this case, I had a giveaway for the homeless that was coming up just in 2 days or whatever it was. This is like a Friday or something like that. And so I was like, on Sunday, first Sunday of the month, boom. I'm there for. Oops, sorry, I didn't hit the camera. I'm there for the helping the homeless, and they were like, "Oh, okay. Who do you do that with?" And so that was like, oh shit. Here we are. There's a lot of people around. Like, what do we do? And so, I was like, Austin Atheist Helping the Homeless, and I didn't say it loudly. It was definitely a low murmur.
You just had to emphasize the helping the homeless part. Forget about the atheist.
Yeah. And so, she kind of caught herself, and she was like, wait a minute, like, what's the name of the group? I was like, oh boy. And so I was like, well, it's Austin Atheist Helping the Homeless. And she was just like, what, atheists? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, well, why would you be volunteering with them? And at that time, I didn't want this big hullabaloo, because I knew that it could potentially turn into that. And so I couched it in, I was like, oh, well, they do very good work. Oh man, I remember that. Woo! I was like, oh, well, they do really good work out there, something along those lines. It's terrible. It's terrible now that I've talked, but at that time, oh, it made the most sense in the world. It was just like, oh yeah, it was just,
sure, yeah.
It wasn't even we do amazing work. It was, well, they do amazing work. This was some years ago, mind you. This was some years ago, because now there would be no question. Oh yeah, we surely do. We surely do. We're out there every fucking Sunday. Well, every first Sunday, should I say? But and so she kind of couched, she kind of took it in, and I could tell that she was rattled by that. She was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna give you a call. I'm gonna give you a call. After here, no, well, is there, when are you heading back? Can I take you to lunch or something like that? And I was like, well, no, I'm heading back early tomorrow morning. Oh, dang, I wish I could take you to lunch and talk to you some more, something like that. And so there was a follow-up call.
Bring my Bible.
Oh goodness, yeah, and it was I was expecting definitely one of those, but she, they did call, and we had a conversation about things, but it was interesting because it kind of avoided the A word, the scarlet A word for the most part, and it was it was more focused on the actual work that was being done out there. That was their focus, and it was fairly amicable on that side. At the end of it, they were taking like notes about, well, how do you do this? Where do you get the funding for this? Do you get help from other people? What all do you bring? And so I was going over the different things that we have amassed over time, and the different wish lists, and what you could buy and where for what price, to stretch things out and everything else. And so it became a very productive conversation and more focused on the community service aspect more than anything else, which was unexpected to me. But
That's cool.
I enjoyed that conversation for that portion because we sure were going over different ideas about how they could do something similar, in their church body. Because whether it's religious or not, if you are going out and you're actively helping in the community, you're not preaching at them, or you're not waving a Bible over their heads in order to get what it is that you're providing, then I am
Right.
super down with you getting out there, because it's going to take all of us to get that together. And if that is your shtick, if that's what you need to do, you need to say a prayer before you really get to work, then have at it. Just do
Yep.
what you need to do, as long as it comes with the follow up of, let's get out there and let's go make this impact in this way. And so I have no issue having that kind of conversation with someone who was interested in doing so. And so it turned out to
Sure.
be a pretty good conversation. But the family, for the most part, it's not something that's really spoken about. It is known, but not really spoken.
Okay.
So, um, it's the same thing with me being gay.
I was going to
I,
ask you which was
it's
harder.
definitely the atheist side more than anything else, which is funny now. But when I came out as gay, there were so many more considerations that rolled in my mind on that side, because
Hmm.
I was familiar with the Trevor Project. I had already been exposed to YouTube at that time. I've heard stories of disownment and violence, all of these things that could happen and have happened to youth, and that was just mainly in the US that was focus. And my concern was, okay, if this happens to me, what could I potentially lose if I get cut off? Well, I don't own a vehicle, but I still need to get a ride to get to work, up in the DFW area. And so if I lose that, well, what am I supposed to do? What about insurance? I don't have my own insurance. And so what can I
Hmm.
do to get that? I'm still on my parents' insurance. And if they cut that, well, then what? It was all of these considerations of, my independence and me being codependent on someone else, in this case, my parents, that it was much more stressful for me. It it forced me to accelerate my move to independence as quickly as possible, because at some point it was going to come out, because I had no girlfriends at all, for a bajillion years. Like, but we're talking, the last time I had a girlfriend would have been the first fucking grade. Like, we're like, this is a long time ago. Okay, this is a long time ago. So it's going to be if it's not known already, it's going to be known without a doubt at some point. Like, it's coming out. Damn it, it's coming out. So I remember getting my own apartment. I
Yeah.
took on a second job. I started getting insurance from my employer, which really dug into the small amount that I was getting. But I was like, I don't care. I need to do this. I ate noodles for almost
It's a good option.
yeah, I ate noodles for almost 3 months in order to save up for a car. Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. Like, it was. I didn't use all the salt because I knew that could damage all of that sodium content. Time and time again, could damage kidneys and stuff like that. I didn't want to go that far, but it was like 10 fucking cents a pack. And so sometimes I would eat it
Yeah.
as a soup. Sometimes I would break them up and eat them like chips. And it would be like, boom,
Yeah.
there's lunch. It is what it is. And I saved up money over the course of that summer to buy my first cash car for $2,225. Boom, there it was.
Not bad. Not bad.
You know,
What
you
kind of
know,
car was it?
it was a Mercury Sable. And that
Oh
as
yeah.
a
Okay.
and so it was a big body car. But it handled well. I thought this was pretty awesome. My parents are like, this is a big car. This is it's a wide body car. I'm look at my small car now. It's a fraction of the size, and I miss the trunk space. Like, you could my mom used to say you could hide bodies back there. Like it's the way that she would phrase it. Like it
You
was
probably
no,
put your
no.
new car in that trunk.
I'm just saying, good night. But it was amazing. But the gas was garbage,
Oh
garbage.
yeah.
Like 17 to maybe 19 miles a gallon in that thing, and
Oh wow.
it was pretty bad, especially when the tank was huge. And I'm like, I'm on a budget, and so I was running on E a lot. It's just, it was what it was. But
I remember doing the same thing back in the day, man, with my first vehicles.
yeah, it's
I
just
barely got to a quarter tank most of the time.
man, it was just it was bad. It was bad. It was bad. The tank. I don't even remember how large the tank was, but I know it was huge, and the gas just evaporated out, and it was just like, well, we'll put $4, $5. How much do I need to get to where I'm going, and that's about all. Like this, just like what's the bare minimum that we need, and I'll work that. I ran out of gas twice, I think, after
Oh,
misjudging.
that sucks.
Had to call insurance to come out there and give me a gallon or two so I can get to my next destination. So,
Or to a gas station.
right, right. Good night. But it was much more stressful coming out as gay because there was much more considerations about my well-being and independence. Now, when I came out, to my parents' credit or whatnot, it was nothing like that. It was nothing to that degree at all, at all. And so, but I was preparing for the worst because I didn't know. I don't know. So
Right.
I'm not
Of
going to
course.
go in this like, come on. I'm not going to just go into it like that and just hope for the best. Fuck that. Let's build a plan. Let's do this. But yeah,
Well,
coming out as
especially since you've heard
atheist.
all those stories too, right? Like you said, you'd seen some horror
Oh
stories
yeah,
on YouTube about it, right? So yeah,
yeah.
doesn't surprise me.
It was so much of that out there. This was pre. Of course, this was pre Obergefell, the decision, the gay marriage decision. I
Yeah.
mean, there was so many things about just gays serving in the military in general. Don't ask, don't tell was still a thing. All these debates about it and affecting military readiness, and it was all of this condemnation coming out from all
Mhm.
different sources. Even though support was building, of course, over time, but the voices you heard the most were the ones that were against
Sure.
this huge group of people, and so that's what you were exposed to for the most part. But once that was done, and I'd been through all of that, when I came out, as atheist, I knew that it was going to cause some issues because having religious family, I knew that it wasn't necessarily going to be a silent topic. Like it wasn't just going to be not brought up. At some point, a conversation was going to happen, and but to my surprise, most people didn't. It wasn't people didn't come out the peanut shell. People didn't act a fool, so to speak. It
Okay.
was just not something that was talked about. It was known. It's very much known. Some family blocked my timeline from showing up on theirs, so they wouldn't
Hmm.
have to see any atheist content or at least by that time, even gay content, because maybe that may be a little bit too much rainbow in their timeline uh, by seeing
Never
mine.
enough rainbow. Come on.
Never, never. Oh my God. I have a rainbow flag that's posted up on the wall right now. Like it's a cloth rainbow flag, and if I could bring it over, it's a thing. Uh,
I got something I got to grab real quick and show you, Phil. I got it at Faithless Forum when I was down there, and
oh, cool, cool.
I have this sucker that I carry around sometimes. So
Oh, nice,
um,
nice.
do that, right? Yeah. When
I like
equality
it.
is under attack, atheists show up. Right. So there you go.
Damn right. Let me see if I could find it here. I'm trying not to show you my terrible little apartment here, but here's my
It's bigger than my closet. Come on.
boom. It's right there hanging up behind me. I love the
That's
little
where I
thing,
sleep.
which I love. I love it.
There you go.
But anyway,
All right. Hang on. Did that show up, you guys?
oh,
I don't
did
think
it
it
not
showed
show
up.
up at all?
It's getting a little. I don't think so. I'll feature
No,
you,
no.
and then you can show
Okay, let me get back up over there. My bad.
it.
Oh, let me turn on the lights.
That's okay. It's because I was yakking too much.
Oh, there it is.
There you go.
I love my little flag
There
back
you go.
there. I have those, and a lot of the things that I designed for Austin Pride, like the rainbow wristbands, for example. They're everywhere. I have several in there that I can give out to people, something like that. It's just
Like this one?
never, just like that one, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah. There you
Very
go. I got that
awesome.
when I was down there too.
Daggone right. But yeah, I never can have enough rainbows. But yeah, that's just kind of the way that they took it. That's the way that they decided to deal with it. And whatever works for them, because I do things for my mental health that I need to, and I'm not going to necessarily put onus or blame on someone else for doing the same to take care of their own mental health. I may disagree with that and wanting them to be exposed to other people and different ways of life than they are used to, especially if that's your family or an acquaintance or what friend or whatever else. It can be very helpful to learn a little something about an experience that you have no real context for, except for what you see on
Learning
TV
is
and
always
whatever
good.
else. But it's what they did, and so that's kind of the same thing that's happened with the atheism side. It's just kind of gone by the wayside. It's not something that's talked about. We may have conversations, like maybe me and my mom here and there. I mean, my dad had a conversation a long time ago, but it's not something that's brought up, all the time. My mom, she wants to know information in spurts.
Mhm.
She doesn't want too much, but we'll have a conversation about a certain topic, and boom. Once she's done, then she'll be like, all right, that's enough. And she'll close it down like that. But we've had maybe six or seven of those types of conversations where she'll get onto one facet of it. And, we recently, I think it was last year, or maybe the year before, when we were talking about my community service and why I feel so strongly about that. And we did have that conversation on that side about
Right.
how my atheism and the fact that I don't believe in an afterlife informs my view of the importance and necessity of doing something on this planet while we're
Exactly.
here, and
Yep.
let alone our lives that are temporary, but also the people whose lives we affect are also short as well in the grand scheme of things. And so that makes
Sure.
it ever more necessary and pertinent to do something now, whatever we can, kind of coming up with new ways to have an effect. Looking at the data that's around that we can collect to figure out how to do things in a better way and in a more
Hmm.
effective way. And so it's definitely worth it. And so we that was a conversation, and then it's just like oh, okay, boom, and that was it. But we have those conversations here and there, but for the rest, not so much. For the others, which is fine. We still get along. We still love each other. We enjoy each other's company. We do our own thing, and the love is still there. And I do value that above a lot. But if it ever became
Yes,
a
of course.
problem, it would be something to discuss, boundaries and everything else. But it hasn't come to anywhere near that point as
Nope. Looks like we froze up. Oh, let's see if I can. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Lose Phil?
Okay. Hmm. I'm not sure what just happened there. I'm not sure if you guys are out there still. It says it's live. And I see that there is. Oh, oh. Are you back, Neil? Maybe. Hello. Oh, oh, there we go. Hello.
That's okay. Something got all froze up there.
Okay. You're chopping up, but you are definitely present. Maybe.
You got me?
Okay.
Hang on,
Okay.
hang there, Phil.
I'm definitely hearing a piece. Some. I'm hearing some of you there. Hmm. Guess I could pull up
Can you hear me
the.
now?
Yes, I can right now. Yes.
Can you see? I can hear you, Phil. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. I can hear you now.
Something's going on here.
Oh.
Hang on here.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Come on. Work with this.
Still chopping up a bit there on that side.
Try rebooting. You still with me, Phil? All right. Okay. We are having some issues here for whatever reason. I don't know if it's my end, Phil's end. I'm not sure. Shit. Hang on. All right. Phil, can you hear me? Okay. Okay. I'm not sure what's gone on here. Sorry, guys. What I can do is bring this to a close. And we'll get into an after party for a little bit. Can't be too long today, though, because I have to go for a roast beef dinner. So just somebody type yes that you can hear me.
Okay. Goodness.
Or something. So
Okay.
There. Are you there? Oh, I had you
Yeah,
briefly.
yeah. I'm not sure what's.
For fuck's sake.
Oh, no.
Be-
It's actually working for me. And we'll see what goes on. I'm not sure if my voice is actually going out or not. I wish I could see the chat. That would be super amazing, but I can't see your chats if there's anybody there. And hopefully you can. Oh. Are you there, Neil?
okay.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell happened there.
Neither do I. We were going along so well.
I know, and then all of a sudden, everything just decided to do a flip flop on me or something. Everything froze. Everyone in the chat said I broke the internet. So apparently, I broke the internet.
Well,
anyways, where exactly were we in this conversation?
oh goodness, we were talking about the family, like how they took it. You know, how I came out to the family, whether it was harder to come out as gay versus
or as atheist
on that side, which yeah, definitely the.
You know, I hear a lot from other people that I've spoken to that are also gay that it was a lot harder to come out as an atheist when you're dealing with a religious family.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a common thing.
It definitely is. Like, I mean, even with all the considerations that I had coming out as gay, but it was still, I was still a believer at that time. And so it kind of insulated the blow to everyone that I was still a believer. I still had belief in God, even though I was gay,
Sure.
I was still in the fold. So, it was a lot of, emotional stress on me about becoming independent and everything else. However, I knew that, I mean, I was still a believer that they would still accept me to a degree because I was still God's child. And I remember having that conversation with my mom when I initially came out to her,
Hmm.
that, that it was still in that frame. So that made things better for her and others on the side to accept me because even though I'm gay and the God's word says some disparaging things about those that follow that path, I was still a child of God. Therefore, maybe in their minds, I was still saved. I could still be saved, and it was kind of an insulating uh, cushion versus me coming out as gay and atheist all at once, and it's like whoa, like just at that point the world is falling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
But
a double whammy.
yeah, yeah. But when it came to the atheist side, when that happened, I knew that that would cause a lot of distress because now I'm ripping out the safeguard. I'm ripping out the
Right.
saved safeguard that's sitting there because I'm no longer a child of God. I'm one of those people that was talked about in the church services, one that rejects the word or whatever malevolent description was used to try to describe such an individual. That's how they might perceive me going forward, and that was definitely a scary thing. And so when I came out as gay, it was much more direct. When I was
Mhm.
ready and I'd reached the point that I felt comfortable in my independence that I could shoulder if the worst would come to happen, I was able to do so. When I came out as atheist, I was not able to come out in a direct fashion. I did this roundabout way. And let me just post this here community service activity with
What
these
happened?
atheist folks. But nowhere in it did I say that I was an atheist. Nowhere did I actually make a declaration that
Right.
it was just talking about the work that was done, trees or whatever else that was going on. And so it was couched softly in that type of way, and it was just that's just the way it was done. I remember another big moment was when I changed my religious views on Facebook to actually atheist. Oh my God! Oh, it was just like, what if I put this, and is it going to make a post out for everybody to know? But I don't want to
I
keep it
believe it.
as I don't want to keep it as religious or Christian, whatever I had at the time. And so that was just that. What do I do? Is it worth changing this? And eventually, after a month or so had gone by after I first considered doing that to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do it, and we'll see what happens. I'll keep it only open to friends, and who goes to check the about column anyway? How often does that happen? When you've already friended somebody, like when someone's not my friend, I will go through and see what's on the little about thing, what else.
Sure, sure,
But
sure.
but when I'm friends with somebody, I'm like, meh, it's not a thing. So I
I know
became
enough.
easier with it. But I stressed about it though. Like, it was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm declaring to the world once I put it on Facebook.
It's Facebook official.
Right. It's like relationship status. It's not official
Yeah,
until it's
yeah.
on freaking Facebook or some ish. And so it was just one of those things. But it was a much harder decision than now that I am out and everything else. It's like, how was that such a hard decision? Why was that so bad at that time?
Mm.
But yet it was. And I do recognize that it was at the time. It was a lot of considerations about what could go wrong based on me changing this one attribute on this website. But it's just the way that it went.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, if that's what worked, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming doing it that way, um, you weren't overwhelmed with anxious replies or worried relatives like that. That probably happened a little bit, one little like bits at a time. I imagine.
It actually didn't really happen at all from most of the people that I would have expected it to.
Okay.
It was just not discussed.
Okay.
It just wasn't there. And I know that there was some commentary, and there still is from time to time about when I've gotten awards. Like I got an award from the Freethinkers Association of Central Texas here in San
Mhm.
Antonio for community service. Oh, that's the shirt that I'm wearing now, as a matter of fact. Is this reversed for y'all? Like, is it? Does it say
Nope.
fact?
Climate change is a fact. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's reversed, but maybe that's just my camera that's looking weird like that. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Mine's
but when I
reversed too when I look at it. So, but somebody else wanted to see what I was wearing, and it's the alien guy that says free hugs. So
free,
it's the face hugger.
that's pretty awesome. But yeah, when I got that award, there were some people that I knew are very religious, friends and family that were there that said, congratulations, I was, so proud of you and your, community service efforts and everything
Yeah.
else. And it was just like it was gratifying to know, like, there's some people that said that. It was just like, wow, I know that you are like, whoo, like you're deep in there. And so and so it really made it was pretty awesome on that side. But I think just the way that most of my atheism comes about on my timeline is through postings about community service, upcoming stuff, recaps of things that have happened, things like that. And so since it's couched in those terms and it's so superfluous throughout, most of my timeline
Mm.
is community service oriented stuff, for the most part, with the
Yes,
exception
I've
of
noticed.
recently, which has gotten more stories and political stuff here and there as I make commentary
Sure.
here and there. But it was couched in that lens, and so I was an atheist, but it was through this lens of all this community service outreach that was happening.
Your
And so
humanism.
right, and so I think that was in my mind. I hoped that. Uh, Not that it was my intention, but that it helped to change some of the preconceived notions that people have about who an atheist is, what they
Mhm.
believe, and what kind of outlook they have at the world. Because I've made mistakes, and it's been a wild ride. That's for damn sure. But if I am that exposure, if that's like one of the first atheists that they know of, and this black atheist at that, um, then I'm okay with that because you know, I would like to think that I have some kind of effect on how they look at people who are non-believers, and I hope so. Maybe it's like the smallest effect, or maybe it's none at all. But the comments that have happened over the course of years, and the conversations that I've had, it seems to at least be affecting some people to where it's not such a knee-jerk reaction at the
Mhm.
very least when someone is an atheist. They may still have their own beliefs about it and everything else, but there is this other side that's there. And it's like, well, not all atheists are, going out there and debating hardcore and carrying around the signs and like we don't care about your hell or somebody, not even though there's like when I'm out at the Alamo, for example, during the Ask an Atheist at the Alamo here in San Antonio, there's a little bit of those conversations that happen, but
Sure. Sure.
it is what it is. But yeah, I hope that it has an effect, and it's not an intention of mine. It definitely wasn't an intention going into any of the work. I was just doing, what I wanted to do, what made me happy, and that was engaging in that type of outreach. But it has had enough of
Which
an
is
effect.
fantastic.
Hopefully so, but that's the way I look at it at the very least.
Well, I'll tell you one thing right now, Phil. Whenever you're brought up in conversations, because we talk about the people that we admire, like from your show and all the people around it and people that are involved in that sort of thing, and your name always pops up absolutely every time we talk about humanist type behavior and always doing good things for the community and for people. Yours is one of the first names that ever gets mentioned when we talk about that sort of thing. So you are having an effect. And I think what you do is leaving a much sweeter taste in people's mouths about what atheists are. It might be little amounts at a time, but eventually it'll work its way in there, and we will be able to change people's attitudes of who we are as people, that we do have a moral code of some kind.
Yeah, and there's I'll be giving a talk later on this year at the Black Nonbelievers C convention.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be in November of this year, and that's one of the topics that I'm going to be discussing. Is there's a lot of avenues that people have, atheist non-believers have, when they're discussing their atheism with others and changing minds, changing hearts, or whatever else, even if it's not necessarily changing their minds about their beliefs, but changing their preconceived notions about what they think an atheist is and does in the world, and what worth does an atheist have if they don't have this belief and moral compasses and everything else that you were referring to. And there's so many ways that we go
Mm-hmm.
about doing this. Some people take that the debate side is what helps them to realize what's going on, or the anecdotal stories or emotional stories, and the personal progression and narratives that people lay out of what their journey was. Is Sometimes that helps to move people in a more positive direction about the way they
Mm-hmm.
perceive atheists. But even though there's value in all of these different approaches, but for me, the
Sure.
approach of community service and actually engaging with the community is by far, in a way, the most gratifying and one of the most effective ways that I think it is to really start making a difference and in the hearts and minds of people from the outside looking into what an atheist is. And the representation that we've had, like there was a article that was written. I can't remember the name of the newspaper now in Austin. I really can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Austin. I don't know. I'll look it up later, and I'm like, obviously it's that one, but right now it's just not there. But in any case, they were talking
It
about,
happens to me all the time.
yeah, yeah, it's just terrible. Yeah, as soon as I get off of here, I'm like, it's the Austin whatever the fuck, paper or something. But
Sounds
anyway,
like a cool.
but there was an article about the state of homelessness in the Austin area. And so it was focusing on a lot of the different groups that go out to try to aid people that are low income or experiencing homelessness in the Travis County area, and talking about some of the programs that are trying to be started, kind of piloted and pulled together to do something of a much larger scale to try to stem that problem. And one of the pictures that they featured in that article was indeed it was a picture of one of our giveaways, and it was one of our volunteers, and it had the back of our shirts that says Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless. And it was just like, boom, right here in the midst of this article. And it was so amazing. And I remember when the a reporter uh, or journalist from that news outlet, which I hate that I can't remember. But anyway, when they came to one of our giveaways to say, like, hey, is it okay if we take a picture of, a part of your group, or, what it is that you're doing out here? And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, we really
Hell
appreciate
yeah.
that. And it was just, it was fascinating. I don't know how much that little article that was done, like how much, change it would do, but at the very least, it helps to put a presence and an actual figure with the name and label of atheist, that, oh, this is what these people are doing out here. And it may make people think twice when they hear the word atheist, that, like, oh, well, no, I remember seeing that in that paper that time, and it was the helping the homeless. It's right there in the title as to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what the group's aim is. And I hope that that has changed, and it has had an effect on a lot of the people that we interact with down there, time and time again, as they're going through the system. On there, as I'll be talking about more out on the BNC the convention out at sea with Black Nonbelievers later on, to really talk about that impact that it has had and the tangible change that we've seen in the way that the population that we serve looks at us as a group, because it's definitely changed over the amount of years that I've been in charge that group and growing it out and everything else. And so it's an effective method, and it's a method that I think really really can make a difference in atheist activism and visibility of the
Hmm.
atheist community into the large, because we have a lot of groups, there's a lot of groups that are out there doing those things, but we have there's like one of those adopt a street signs that people do.
Yep, we
They'll
have
have
them
a
here
little
too.
name of the name of the group and all that other kind of stuff out there. But when I was contacting someone from the city about a non-related issue, and I told them the name of the group, this was, in this case, it was the Atheist Community of Boston. He chimed back. He was like, "Oh, I know that group. Y'all have a stretch of land up on Anderson and Burnett or something like that, about a Jack in the Box." And I was like, "That's exactly right. How about that?" And so he had already known. He was like, "Oh, that section is kept so clean. Y'all do awesome work out there," something along those lines. And in my head, I was like, I was I was
Someone noticed.
I was happy internally. I didn't project that on the phone. At least I hope I didn't. But it was. But I thought it was awesome that this person who may or may not have been religious. We didn't get into that conversation, but
Sure.
that he knew exactly who we were and had a favorable opinion of this group, whereas he may not have of this group or atheists in general had he not seen the sign or been a part of this program and seen that piece up there. And so it really it stretches out, and it has those effects, and it's hard to measure those effects, but in the ways that we have been able to see, that those are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about on this side, and raising the awareness of atheists in general through the lens and the work of community service and involvement of so many of these atheist organizations that are out there, because that's one of the methods of getting out there, but that's the way that I prefer the most because of the benefit that it can have on uh, people around. Oh, I need to plug this thing in, or else I'm going to lose you. But because of the effect that it has and the impact that it has, it's definitely something worth considering. But I'm gonna take off my camera for just 2 seconds. I'll still be here for sure. I can still hear
Oh
you,
yeah,
but
yeah,
let me
yeah,
let me let me go get a charger.
for sure.
But yeah. So that's the way that I look at it. And now, we'll see. Hopefully, people are really getting into it. And I've talked on several podcasts about that particular thing. And so I really hope that that really starts catching on. That people start to get much more involved in their own communities, in their own local organizations, where they can, where it's safe to do so. Because
I've
not
done it here in Vancouver. It's not atheists helping the homeless. We don't have that kind of a thing here, but we do have
sure.
what's it, outreach to the homeless or something like that. And I've gone out with
Okay.
them a few times. So and I'm a lot similar to you, not quite as active as you are, but I have the blood donation thing with all the people that I've recruited, and I've also got the charity drives for Ronald McDonald House and stuff like that, right? So,
Okay.
we just have to show the world that we're not bad people, and even if we just change a couple of voices or a couple of minds at a time, that's what matters. It's baby steps, and eventually that'll just keep spreading, and it'll be like that old TV commercial where and she told two friends, and so on and so on and so on, and eventually people's minds will change that we're not the evil monsters that everyone seems to think we are. The baby eating atheists, stuff like that.
Yeah, that is for sure. So yeah, that's where my aim is really focusing on now, as I kind of move forward and figure out what it is that I want to do and how I want to really make that impact. And just that's where my mind is focusing on now. And so I know in the Austin area,
Not a bad place.
yeah, it's really not. So I'm definitely I was it last month? I think it was. Well, no, it was early this month, as a matter of fact. But I attended a meeting. There's a coalition in the Austin area. It's called the Ending Community Homelessness Coalition. It's based there in Austin, and every organization in the Travis County area that has a focus on helping those that are low income or homelessness show up. And so there were people representing an organization focusing on veterans. There was an organization fixated on helping those that were physically or had a disability of some type. One that was focused on elderly, the one for youth was there, one for the people of color. There were representatives from the city, from the county. Were there people from universities that were nearby, from UT Austin that's out there? It was, it's all of these people, and we're sitting in this huge circle. And as people are going through and introducing themselves, and I introduce myself as, I am Phil Session. I'm the coordinator for Austin Atheist Helping the Homeless. And so, it was that. It was like this. It was a slight pause, as I'm looking at reactions in the room, but it was mostly positive, and I was pretty happy about that. But it's not a presence that they get at that meeting almost ever. It's not something that they see, and so I'm going to begin going to those meetings often and interacting with folks there and talking about the issues, because that in that coalition, that's where a lot of the decisions regarding the money that comes into Travis County and to the city, as far as how they fund programs in the city that help to eliminate or reduce the burdens of homelessness and low income in that area. And so there's so much decision making power that comes out of this group, and it's just like, I can't believe that there hasn't been a humanist or atheist group that's been present at this meeting that's been going on for years. This coalition that's been going on for years. And so I'm like, you know what? Damn it! Here we go. Like
that's rep.
And yeah, and I was invited to come back and sit at the table along with everybody else. Wow. And so it was really awesome. And so I plan to go ahead and keep going out to the monthly meetings as things change and they start making decisions. And talking about what the priorities are. That was a big conversation that we had last time, was what are the priorities? And there was so much variation on what the priority scheme was. And it's just like, it was just so much. And it's mind-boggling to say, like, you have all these different priorities from all these different groups, all these different people, and yet you have a certain chunk of money depending on what the federal Housing and Urban Development Program actually decides to give to this county. And it's just like, once they do, that's what you got. So now what? How is that actually being divvied up? And it's a kind of I hate to think of it as a zero-sum game, but in those circumstances, that's what it kind of turns into. You get a chunk of funds, and you may get some from the municipal level, from the county level, but this is your chunk of funds. Okay, well, now what? Like, how are we divvying that up? And oh man, it was very intriguing. It was definitely intriguing, that conversation. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting more into those conversations with those folks. But I came especially for the first couple of meetings just to listen as to all the issues that they were having, and it was just an amazing thing to hear. But sorry, that's random aside once again.
That's okay, man. It's important stuff too, because I mean, that's all part and parcel of us being atheists, is trying to improve the image. And so thank you for what you do, by the way. So
I appreciate that. It's awesome.
But my friend, this one went almost 2 hours, and I've rarely.
Oh, is it really? Is it really?
That happened. So
get out of here. Okay.
Yeah, we have almost gone 2 hours. I know.
You should have stopped me.
It's a great conversation.
You should have stopped me.
Oh, hell no. No. I had no intentions of that. We're gonna talk about whatever we had to talk about for as long as it took. But yeah, normally I usually go about an hour. But anyways, what we can do here is we'll wrap this up, and then you can jump in and just say hello to a couple folks for about 10 minutes or so, and then you often do what you got to do for work-wise. And sure. I'm going to take a quick leak and whatnot, and grab refresh my water and stuff, and then I'll send you a fresh link, and we'll get into an after party. I've already got some people that have requested to come in and say hello, so expect a couple of people anyways. But awesome. So Phil, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say like I didn't have another device that I could actually actively look at comments because people may have been making some while it's been going on, and I hate that I didn't have anything with me. I have two phones that are set up to actually shine lights on my face, so that's what's happening right here. Because we're professional around here. And then I have my tablet here
Right,
set
right.
up in the middle that's actually doing the interaction side. And so I didn't have an extra device that I can
I
actually
got one of
punch
these,
in.
man. I got this little lamp thingy here that I use, but and I don't even aim it directly at me because it's bright as hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't worry about
Yeah.
the chat. They were basically yelling at each other, so it's okay.
That is funny. Yeah, I appreciate you all, and
um,
yeah, I'm not sure who all is here. If there's anybody
and we
in
appreciate you.
Texas, if y'all,
Well,
but I don't know.
oh yeah, I'm not sure if anyone we've got quite a few people in the chat actually. So my friend David of DRP podcast or Dave Worley podcast, he's interviewed
I know
Aaron
that
and,
name. Yeah, I
and
know
stuff
that
like that.
name.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, cool.
He might try to talk you into coming on his show too. So just so you know.
That's funny. That's funny. But cool. Yeah, this was
Anyways,
awesome. This is awesome. I had no idea that we've gone on that long, but I
yeah,
enjoyed
I
it.
know.
This
Well,
is pretty cool.
time flies when you're having fun, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Phil. And when I met you, it was one of the coolest days of my life. You're one of the most chillest, coolest people I met when I was down there, for sure. And anyways,
awesome.
thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with Phil and I while we had this conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did, for sure. We're going to get into an after party in probably a little less than about 8 minutes or so. Give me a little bit of time to put myself back together here and fix my shitty connection if I can. And Phil, I'll send you a brand new link. And
Cool.
again, thank you very much for hanging out with me this afternoon and telling me your story. I think it's important that we share these stories, right? So that they might be of use or help to people out there.
Yeah, I hope
in
so
one
as well.
way or another.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, well, I very much enjoyed it. And all right, guys, as I usually say at the end of these things, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, they call it faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.